How do you manage a torus fracture? Hello and welcome to this week's Urgent Bite, brought to you by the Royal New Zealand College of Urgent Care. My name is Guy Melrose and today we take a quick look at the torus fracture. Torus fractures are named after the Latin word torus, which means a ridge or protuberance. The circular ridging at the base of columns and pillars on ancient buildings are called a torus, and it's that appearance that you see on x-rays of buccal fractures, when the cortical bulging deformity is seen on two sides of the bone. But a unicortex buccal fracture is still often referred to as a torus fracture. The National Institute of Health and Care Excellence, or NICE, state that their role is to improve outcomes for people using the NHS and other public health and social care services. One way that they do this is in producing evidence-based guidelines. Being a UK-based service, their guidelines are not accessible from outside the UK on their website, but you come across them being referenced in papers and other international guidelines. But whilst in the UK, I've been able to browse them, and one article I read was the Assessment and Management of Fractures. This guide lists some recommendations, and one that caught my eye was for torus fractures. They recommend against using rigid casts, and they say patients should require no follow-up so long as parents have been given good instructions. So my question to the urgent care community is, how do you manage a torus fracture? So a quick look at the literature would suggest that despite recommendations, there is still a tendency to treat buccal or torus fractures in a cast. I attach a study published in the Irish Medical Journal in August 2018 that found 70% of emergency departments in Ireland were still managing these injuries in rigid casts. I also attach an open access paper from the Journal of Child Orthopaedics in 2018 that did a retrospective study in Florida and found 93% of torus fractures still managed in a cast. Casting is associated with increased consultations and also increased radiographs. Indeed, an Australian study in 2017 found that in 136 patients with buccal fractures, 50% had more than one x-ray, yet all of them healed without complication. So it certainly raises the question of unnecessary radiation exposure in these patients. So let me know how you manage buccal fractures in children. Do you cast and review, or do you splint and have no planned follow-up? If you do the cast and review, what are your reasons for this? And have you tried splinting but found issues with this approach? Let us know via podcast@rnzcuc.org.nz, and we'll discuss this again at a later podcast. Check out the links in the show notes to the open access papers, which are all worth reading, and I also attach a link to an OrthoBullets page on paediatric forearm fractures. We'll be back again next week with another podcast. I look forward to seeing you all then, but for now, thanks for listening.